What on earth happened in and after this fight? I'm Teekosey and you're watching With Just 15 Defeats. Teekosey here, and thanks for joining me for another round of With Just 15 Defeats, the heavyweight boxing show exclusive to YouTube. Today's show, we're going to be discussing the big talking points from the David Haye versus Tony Bellew fight that took place at the O2 this weekend. So before I crack on with that, I just want to say thanks for joining me again. If you've got any comments, click down in the comments section. I will hit you back as soon as possible to create the debate. Give a thumbs up. Remember to check out my channel because there's going to be a variety of previews and there's other videos there to check out. Okay, so let's crack on with this fight. As I say, now this review video is coming a bit late, I know, but I've been so super busy with life that I just haven't had the opportunity to really re-watch the fight, sit down and give it my full consideration until this afternoon, which is Monday. Now, this fight, as we know, Tony Bellew wins it by stoppage in the 11th. Cornerman of David Haye throws in the towel. Okay, it's a very controversial fight because of the serious injury sustained to David Haye. Around about the 6th round, we believe, or we know, it was a ruptured Achilles, and it's quite incredible that he continued on with the fight. Now, before I go any further, I just want to say that I do not want this video to sound like I'm some kind of Haye fanboy, and I'm completely biased, and rose-tinted spectacles, all that sort of thing. Yes, I predicted, like probably 95% of people out there, that David Haye would win this, and he would win it fairly comfortably due to a number of reasons: size, power, speed, experience, everything. Okay, obviously the way it ended is not particularly satisfying because we didn't get a definitive victor, a deserved victor, because of the way the fight went. Now, David Haye's injury completely changed the fight. And I think most people would agree that if he hadn't sustained that injury, the way the fight was going, he would have won it comfortably. Even if he didn't get the stoppage, he would have won it by a landslide points decision. Okay. Now, personally, I had David Haye winning the first 5 rounds, including the first round, which a lot of people have given to Tony, and I think a lot of people give it to Tony because David was very wild. He was swinging, he was missing, his time was out, but that was just some huge punches. The rest of the round, he was landing, he was dominating, everything. Okay, now the other thing, the next thing I wanted to talk about was the fact that Tony Bellew also sustained an injury. He broke his hand. Now, I think I heard something that he broke his hand in the 2nd round. Now, I've watched the fight a couple of times. In the 2nd round, it doesn't really throw anything of any note. In the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th, Tony Bellew really doesn't throw anything of any note, nothing with any sting. So it would lead me to believe that if he injured his hands, he injured it in the 1st round when David Haye was swinging wildly. He missed. Bellew landed a few counter punches towards the end of the round. That's when I would suggest that he broke his hand, if he did. Now, if he didn't break his hand in the 1st round, he didn't break his hand until the 6th round. Okay? And this is interesting because when he broke his hand is interesting because, as I say, Tony Bellew didn't really throw anything with either hand in rounds 2 to 5, and he only really went all in with both hands when he knew David Haye was injured and he tried to take him out. He couldn't take him out. He was unable to take him out. He was unable to really slow down David Haye, despite the fact that David Haye was really struggling to even stand on his feet. Okay, now what we need to appreciate here is the heart and determination that David Haye showed to keep going, because after the we'll say what there was a couple of slips in the 6th round after the injury, and then there was one that was classified actually as a knockdown. David Haye, I think a lot of guys would have actually quit. They wouldn't have got up on that knockdown on the 6th. He was sitting on his ass in the middle of the ring, and I think a lot of boxers would have gone, do you know what? My leg is shot to shit. I can barely move. I don't really have a chance. I'm just gonna stay on my ass, and that's it. Count it out, and there it is. But he actually got up, and I think that shows that he knew he needed to win this fight, and he knew he wanted to win this fight, and he knew he could win this fight. The unfortunate problem for David Haye is that David Haye's entire style is based on being explosive, and even in this twilight of part of his career, it's still about being explosive. Now, we saw in those early rounds that most attacks were started by a jab to the body, and then he tried to explode into combinations. Okay. Now, what we saw in this fight, which we hadn't seen in other fights down the years, was that he could explode into them, but then he was wide open for a counter. He wasn't able to retract himself back into a good position to defend himself. Okay. So, and that is a worrying thing for David Haye moving forward or whatever, okay? But he still had that explosive nature. Now, you take away his back leg, that really is where he pushes off, he was unable to throw any punches with any kind of power. He was unable to move. And realistically, the movement that he showed after the 6th round is quite amazing. That the 7th round, it was a bit dodgy, but after that he managed to settle down. And for my money, he even won the 9th round, which is quite incredible. That Tony knew he was injured. He knew he was seriously injured, and he should have been able to box and move carefully, even with a broken hand. He should have been able to move about the ring and skillfully box David Haye into a simple points decision. He didn't do that. As I say, David Haye won the 9th round. But ultimately, in the end, the fight was stopped. Now, again, when the fight was stopped, Tony Bellew threw a barrage of punches, and Haye kind of fell through the ropes. Now, again, what is interesting is that Haye managed to get back through the ropes, back up onto his feet, and he would have continued. He would have continued. The amount of times we've seen people get knocked through the ropes, that's over. That fight is over, even if they're not seriously injured. Didn't we see it the other week with Bernard Hopkins? He was punched through the ropes, and he couldn't get back into the ring. He couldn't get back to the ring, and he probably would have been able to carry on, but he couldn't get it. David Haye, even with a ruptured Achilles, managed to get back in the ring. And I think the coach, McGuigan, he should have let the fight continue. He should have let it go to its normal conclusion. I don't think Bellew would have stopped him. That's my opinion. I don't think he would have stopped him. I think it would have carried on, and we would have seen whatever. Okay. Now we move on to the post-fight. The post-fight talk, which I think is almost as interesting as the actual fight itself. Now, afterwards we saw a lot of arse licking. David Haye was very complimentary to Tony Bellew. Oh, the better man won, and I wasn't up to the standard, and blah, 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 blah. We know that David Haye there's no way he could have gone on the offensive to really say, oh, the injury, because of what we saw in the Klitschko fight. The Klitschko fight, the way that he behaved afterwards was an embarrassment. He didn't need to talk about that toe injury. Whilst the fact is, I'm one of the few people that think it was definitely an injury that significantly reduced what David Haye was all about. He didn't need to tell the world. He didn't need to get his shoe out. He didn't need to do what he did. And I think in this fight, it would have been just for him to do so. But because of that backstory, he was unable to do it. Okay, he was unable to do it because of that backstory, and people would have seen him as a sore loser again. Okay, but it's clear that he only did this because he's looking to get a rematch. In his mind, straight away he's thinking, do you know what? If I say this and that, there's no way, particularly the way that he behaved with Eddie Hearn and co, there's no way he's going to do it. He needs to get on the good side of Tony Bellew to almost get the potential for a rematch to occur. Now, I think a rematch would be good. Whether it will happen, I haven't got a clue. But what I didn't like was the way that Bellew behaved when afterwards, in a lot of the talk where he's been talking like he legitimately beat and stopped David Haye. He's talking like there was no circumstantial issues as to why he's got this win. Yes, when we look back on the history books, we're going to see that Tony Bellew beat David Haye by stoppage, right? And that's, yeah, a lot of times, that's all we need to know. In 30 years' time, when people look at the history books and go, oh yeah, it was David Haye and whatever, he lost to Tony Bellew, bloody hell, whatever, it was a stoppage, whatever. But the actual fight tells a completely different story because of the injury. And I think Tony Bellew, the way he's behaved, Eddie Hearn, I know they were obviously so excited to basically stick two fingers up at David Haye for the way that the build-up and whatever, but it's a kind of hollow victory, I think, because it wasn't a deserving victory. Well, that's just my opinion, and I'm entitled to have that. Okay, so let's just talk about Tony Bellew at heavyweight. I think he was fine. I think when we talk about the size differential, there wasn't really one. I kind of alluded to it in some of my previous videos in the past that there was going to be a size differential, and there really wasn't a size differential. They were both about the same size. Obviously, physique and all that sort of thing was a difference, but I think Bellew was fine at heavyweight, and I think he could probably fight at heavyweight, to be perfectly honest. So it just shows you how big he actually is. And also, like, I did a video some months back, about 5 or 6 months ago, where I spoke about the weight classes and that it's not as difficult as people make out to jump through the weight classes because of the relative sizes of people. And I think that, in the world of the super heavyweights of Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, Klitschko, all these guys who are huge, gigantic guys, yes, he's a smaller guy. David Haye is smaller, but for me, David Haye is a definite heavyweight. He's not a cruiserweight. That is so long ago, the heavyweight. So Tony Bellew, you could fight heavyweight. Would I give him a hope in hell of beating any of the champions in the heavyweight division? Absolutely no chance. I mean, Anthony Joshua would stop Tony Bellew in 2 rounds max, and I think most of the other guys would do the same. I think Wilder would have too much movement, too much power. Any of these guys would be a stoppage. So, but I think he could compete at heavyweight, and I wouldn't be surprised if he does fight heavyweight, and for the one reason being money. As I spoke about in my preview video, there's no money fights for it cruiserweight. There's some good guys in the cruiserweight. There's no money fights. Tony Bellew could fight anyone in the heavyweight division and make more money than unifying titles at cruiserweight. It's as simple as that. Everyone knows it, and that's why we've got this David Haye fight, because because he made what, £2.4 million, which is probably 3 times what he's made in any fight to date. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Tony Bellew fighting at heavyweight again. Who it's against, I do not know, but wouldn't surprise me. Now, David Haye's future. He's had surgery on the Achilles. Does he have a future? Does he continue? I think it's difficult. He's wasted so much time. These years that he's had out, wasted, going, I'm a celebrity, all this shit, and then fighting 2 absolute chumps in 2016 before we got onto this fight, where this fight isn't even really a relevant fight. It's just a money fight. 4.5 million, I reckon, that he earned. What do you say? Like, he's wasted so much time, and now we're seeing a David Haye who's significantly faded. Now, I ranked him quite highly in my heavyweight preview, my heavyweight ranking in January. He's gonna be dropping. He's gonna be sliding down because he's fading. He's shown that he's faded. He showed that his timing is off. Now, that time might have been down to the fact that he came into the fight with the injury, but who knows? Who knows? Now, it wouldn't surprise me if David Haye continues, but realistically, the only fight out there for David Haye is a rematch with Tony Bellew. If he can't get the rematch with Tony Bellew, it's curtains, I think, because none of the top guys are going to fight him. So that means that he's now got to fight he's got to work his way up. So to get a title shot, he's probably got to fight 3 guys. He doesn't have that time in his career at the moment. I think he's not one of these guys. He's not a Bernard Hopkins that can fight on until he's 102. He's not that guy. So it could be curtains if he can't get the Tony Bellew fight. But I think the money has got to be there for it. I think that both guys will take it. And I think we'll probably see a rematch towards the end of the year. And I think as long as the 2 guys stay fit, I'm going to go with David Haye again to win it. Because I think he is superior. But there we go. Tony Bellew wins. It's a massive feather in his cap. Fair play to him. I'm not sure what he'll do, whether he'll fight one of these other guys in the meantime. But I think if he does fight someone else in the meantime, then there won't be the David Haye fight. I think possibly Tony Bellew has 1 fight left in him, and I don't see him winning another fight. So there we go. Somewhat controversial. But anyway, I just wanted to get this off my chest, and we'll see you later.